Good morning, you beautiful people. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests. It is the 4th of August, 2025. It is exactly 9 a.m. British summertime. And hello and grand rising. Welcome to the show that knows we may live in a low trust society, but it's high value around here, baby. Oh, yes, indeed. Wherever you are watching us today, thank you for being here. Whether you're in the live chat or in the comments afterwards on YouTube, Rumble, X, or Spotify. Thank you. We appreciate you very, very, very much. And how are you all in the comments today, the live chat? How are you? Grand risings to you all, you wonderful people. And hello, Dr. Robert, who's doing decorating today. Good morning to you. Good morning to you all. Bex and Dell and NCP said, please, Sonia, can you one day try to interview Ken McCarthy, author of JFK and RFK's Secret Battle Against Zionist Extremism? Superb interview with him on YouTube channel, Redacted. I like Redacted. I will check out this guy. I absolutely will. Sounds like a winner. And good morning, Armand. I hope you're getting better, sweetheart. Morning, Kath. And who else have we got? Icy Stars. There you go. Lisa, how are you? London Lady, Lynn, Megan, Randy, Robert, Marco, Merv, Nikki, Fred. How are you all, you beautiful people? Marcuson and Simon and Darren and you name it. Girl on fire, which could be me. I heard this brilliant quote yesterday, and that was, you can't experience burnout until you've been on fire. Kind of like that. Yes, indeed, I do. How are you? I hope you are well. Welcome to Wake Up. What is on today's show? We will be joined by music producer and a British Jew, Simon Harris. And it's important I say that because what he's going to be talking about really is why Israel lost his support. And we will also be joined by Talis Keaton, author, crime writer on what makes her tick, which is rather a lot of interesting things, frankly. And what's going on with Tommy Robinson? What happened last week? Let's have a little look at that. And Candace Owens, not only has she doubled down and tripled down and quadrupled down on the Macron claims, but she is still going. She's like a Duracell bunny, isn't she? And Ofcom's Online Safety Act punishments begin this week. More about that shortly. UK migration protest. Anybody see it? A lot of masked provocateurs around. Oh, yes, indeed. And free energy. The African inventor targeted. That's some interesting stuff. And I will be coming up with an unpopular opinion. Oh, yes, indeed. Because I do that sometimes, right? And that is about Ozzy Osbourne's funeral procession that was in Birmingham last week. Lots of Satanism being normalized on British streets it was. And I'm not even religious, but I want to talk about that a little bit later. And we will end with goodbye, energy vampires. Hello, self. It's time to come home. Yes, lots of people talk to me about how tired they feel, how lethargic. Well, I've been through that same process as well, and I'm going to share it with you. So how are you all? I hope you're well. And Shin, how are you, love? I hope you're well. Hello, Fred. Did I already say hello to you? If not, hello to you. Hello, Sean and Stephen and Angela. How are you all, you beautiful people? Bethany and Magic and Derek. Right. First of all, Storm Floris. Anybody seen it? Apparently, going to have big storms in the UK today. In fact, Sunday's news was largely taken up with Storm Floris. Well, I've just been out in the garden, and honestly, it wasn't even windy enough at this stage to blow around my hair. So apparently the UK is bracing for Storm Floris hit today. They're saying that the warnings will be enforced from 6 a.m. this morning until midnight. And that's the yellow warning. And the yellow warning affects Northern Ireland, North Wales, Northern England, and parts where harsh winds are expected along the coastal paths. And the amber warning will remain in effect from 10 a.m. today until 10 p.m. And the amber warning covers, what does the amber warning cover? Let me just have a look at that. Northern Scottish mainland, where apparently the hardest winds stand to pose a danger to life. So do take care out there. Heavy rain is also expected, but it's really our experience around here that obviously all part of the same thing. They like to catastrophize our weather. That's really what's going on. So, but do let me know if you've experienced Storm Floris. Please do. And this week on August the 6th and August the 9th marks the 80th anniversary Since 1945, when the US detonated 2 atomic bombs over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that was obviously during World War II, that was absolute mass devastation, incalculable loss to their nations. The ripple effect would have been ginormous, impacted families for many, many generations. The bombings killed between 150,000 and 246,000 people. That's the estimate that we were told, most of whom were civilians. And really awful stuff. It remains the only use of nuclear weapon in an armed conflict to date. Horrible stuff. Horrible anniversary. And talking about horrible, kids, Ofcom. We don't like Ofcom, do we? Ofcom, of course, is the broadcast regulator who is overreaching into everybody's business. This week, they're going into uber punishment mode. And sorry, I meant to comment last week on the Online Safety Act. It just skipped me for some reason. And the idea, of course, about the Online Safety Act is it's about protecting children, but it was never about protecting children. And there were some new rules that came in last week, came into force, which required social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and X, as well as sites hosting pornography, to bring in measures to prove that someone using them is over the age of 18. Well, of course, that means people have to verify their ages with identification in order to use social media. And that is alarming to very many people. And the idea is that the Online Safety Act was to protect children and to be able to remove illegal content. But the truth is, and we all know it, the rules have been implemented way too broadly, resulting in the censorship of legal content already. And this week, Ofcom, as I say, enter punishment territory with the Online Safety Act. And when I say punishment territory, I mean they're going to start fining people. It's D-Day for a number of online services, including video sharing platforms and social media sites. That is this Thursday, the 7th of August. That is when online providers have been required by Ofcom to submit their records of their children's risk assessment or face enforcement action. This is going to be a real issue for some of the smaller platforms out there, and a number of UK and US platforms have already withdrawn from the UK, thus narrowing the market to the big providers like YouTube. And so obviously we're just going to reach a stage where it's going to be the big providers only who will be providing content, and we all know what happens there. And Ofcom tell us risk assessments are fundamental to keep users safe online in order to put in place appropriate safety measures to protect people. And what Ofcom have done is throughout this year, they've given these online providers a series of warnings. They were the platforms were first of all given 3 months notice, which is why some quit when they did. That was back in April. From that point, there was, as I say, 3 months to carry out what Ofcom considered a suitable and sufficient children's risk assessment in line with the guidance. Then there was a further announcement from Ofcom in July when they announced that they had contacted certain providers of user-to-user and search services that are, in quotes, likely to be accessed by children, requesting that these providers who had thus far failed that they submit records of their children's risk assessment. Now, there are some platforms that are struggling. And so this week, Ofcom will be going in with the big guns. As I say, this Thursday is a deadline, and providers are required by law to respond to any statutory request for information by Ofcom. And many of them are failing to. Now, I've seen a platform under Ofcom investigation before, and it is no laughing matter. Absolutely not. And Ofcom are very clear in showing their intentions, and very few platforms are able to push back in the way that is required. It probably doesn't surprise you at all to learn that Elon Musk's X is one of the platforms that is pushing back. And X stated, when lawmakers approved these measures, they made a conscientious decision to increase censorship in the name of online safety. Oh, yes, indeed, they did. And X went on to say, it is fair to ask if UK citizens were equally aware of the trade-off being made. No, I think many people weren't. People like me, we've been talking about it for a while now, making videos about it, talking about it, raising awareness. But people were like, but it's to protect the children. So it was the same story, isn't it? And X claims the timetable for platforms to meet mandatory measures had been unnecessarily tight. And despite complying, which is what X have done, sites still, or rather some sites are still facing threats of enforcement and in fines, which encourages over censorship. And the UK government have responded saying it is demonstrably false that the Online Safety Act compromises free speech. Absolutely absurd. Of course it does. And the response has been, as well as legal duties to keep children safe, the very same law places clear and unequivocal duties on platforms to protect freedom of expression. Absolute bunkum. It is freedom of expression that is approved freedom of expression, which is no freedom at all. Okay. There's a petition going around. I think at the last count, 500,000 people have signed it. Users have complained that age checks that require personal data to be uploaded to access sites are really problematic, and they're asking for this law to be repealed. The government say it has no plans whatsoever to reverse the Online Safety Act. Of course, it won't reverse it. We are living through totalitarianism, and the best way for captured leaders like Starmer is to censor our media, including our social media, unquestionably. And I thought it was really interesting. I was going through my files yesterday. Look what I found from 2019. 2019, critics blast proposal to quietly make Ofcom a super regulator. It was in the works for a long time. That's 6 years ago, by giving it swinging powers to dish out multi-million-pound fines to Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for publishing harmful videos. 6 years ago, this was reported, that critics blasted the proposals, and yet it all still went ahead, didn't it? Yes, it did. Yes, indeed, it did. And some people are using Ofcom's overreach to claim they are targets when they are not. That is disinformation, and it creates a climate of fear and has a chilling effect on other users. Some people have to accept that their online behavior has brought us to this point, has enabled the government and others to overreach on us. Some people tell dangerous lies about others. They stalk and harass, and then they play the victim. I plan to do a piece about bloggers and journalists who claim they were treated unlawfully, but in fact were not. That said, of course, we should all be concerned about the extreme censorship taking place in the UK via Ofcom. That doesn't mean any old Tom, Dick and Tracy can use it as a coverall for their atrocious behavior. But this has been on the cards, as I say, for a long time. We are looking here at problem, reaction, solution in real time. And I think it's really interesting, a number of things that have come my way. One is, are we familiar with the National Internet Intelligence Investigations Team, who are currently monitoring anti-migrant social media posts? This is Big Brother, of course. They claim that they're looking for signs of unrest, but they are monitoring our free speech. And morning to DJ Morpheus, who pointed out a tweet today from a lawyer who, and this is interesting, and the lawyer, Preston Burns, said, I am now aware of not one, not two, but 3 UK think tanks that have published or are drafting UK Free Speech Act bills to create First Amendment style protections for the British people. And that would be fantastic. We need free speech to be protected. We are being laughed at and discussed all over the world. What Starmer has put his name to is unconscionable, because this has obviously happened on his watch. Of course, this is 1984. They want you to be scared of what you are posting. This is the chilling effect. And by the way, this isn't actually necessarily the government behind this. This is Carnegie. Are we familiar with Carnegie? I'm going to be doing a deep dive into Carnegie. It is Carnegie that is behind this. And one of the people involved with Carnegie, the company, is a former Tony Blair advisor who has been involved with the Online Safety Act. So you know that this is coming from some seriously problematic angles, and we need to all be absolutely aware of it. This is obviously about clamping down on our freedom of speech. The internet proved too powerful for the powers that be, uncontrollable, unwieldy. It brought us together, and now they have to do everything they can to disentangle that. So hopefully we can outwit them one way or another. It's difficult though, difficult times. And can I just say, sorry about my microphone on Friday's show. I hope it's all right today. What can I say? I had some issues. I didn't even realize until I'd done the whole 2-hour investigation, and then I looked in my email inbox and I saw people saying your main microphone isn't on. I'm so sorry about that. But I am absolutely thrilled about the amazing comments and the views. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Truly, I do. Thank you, Peter. Keep doing those deep dives. And the parasites killing us, sausages, but we're doing our best. We have to fight back. Sneeveron says, rest in peace, internet. I know it was good while it lasted, wasn't it, mate? It really was. And thank you, Elaine. Thank you. Thank you, Marco. I appreciate that. Well, the thing is you know what it's like. It's like you put all your time and effort into it, and you want it to be the very best quality possible. But I really do appreciate all of you and all of your comments, and the fact that you were able to see that the content was so much better than the audio quality. Thank you. Really appreciate that. And I see that in the UK, of course, anti-immigration protests are continuing around the UK, including in Epping, which is kind of like where they started this year, in Essex and London. There are a lot of worrying stats, and we all should be concerned. It doesn't make us a bigot for asking questions. Friday alone, there were 900 boat migrants that arrived in the UK, and inhabitants at a hotel that are used to house asylum seekers in the Barbican have been charged with 91 offences, including sex offences. We all should be concerned. Of course we should. And did you know that in 2023, and I think this is interesting, Afghans were the largest cohort to claim asylum in the UK at 7,512. And there was a grant rate of 99%. 1% were refused. This is serious. The migrant protests, of course, as I say, are continuing. Lots of masked men were in the crowds yesterday. Have to be so careful. Big headlines: masked men clashed with police outside Asylum Hotel. Arrests were made. And the hotels in Essex and in London now have seen days, and some of them weeks, of protests and counter-protests. And yesterday, what was actually intended to be a peaceful women and children's protest outside the Britannia Hotel in London was crashed by masked men who set off flares outside the hotel. These are people who are there to cause problems. And by the way, I don't believe you should be allowed to have masks at protests. No, I don't. Because why would you have them? Why would you wear a mask unless you're going to carry out some problematic behavior? It shouldn't mean that you're going to lose your job just because you are decently protesting. So if you're wearing masks, I suggest that is for a nefarious reason. And it generally tends to be on the so-called anti-racism side, the Antifa side, who are wearing masks and causing problems. More arrests were made over the Epping Hotel disorder as well. 2 men charged in connection with disorder. They are Charlie Land, been charged with violent disorder and criminal damage, and Luke Fleming, who has also been charged with violent disorder. Both of them will appear at Chelmsford Magistrates Court today. And last night, police issued a dispersal order in London. And this, again, is the whole idea about we are now having difficulty even with freedom to assemble. They want our freedom of speech curbed and our freedom to assemble curbed. And they issued a dispersal order. And also in Essex, they placed restrictions on the demonstration, saying that the protest had to finish by 8:30 p.m. and must be limited to designated areas outside the building. And they also, in Essex, actually, they introduced requirements on the removal of face coverings until 3 a.m. in the early hours of this morning. And so that's interesting. And I think that's exactly what they should do. I do. Yes, mask will be banned because they'll want us on facial recognition. Vicky, that is a good point, actually. And again, I think what's interesting there is that just because I might agree with something, it doesn't mean that the intention of it was for a good purpose. And I think Vicky is absolutely right. I think that is exactly why the police are banning masks, not because they are protecting people who are legitimately protesting about the about immigration, but because they want people on facial recognition. Spot on, Vicky. Thank you for that comment. Absolutely. And have we all heard about what's going on with Miss Ghislaine Maxwell? So obviously last week she had her one-to-one with the US Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, in which she was said to have talked about more than 100 men connected to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, her former boyfriend. And this also includes Prince Andrew that she talked about. And what has been interesting was after that one-to-one, she was moved to a cushier prison. And they said she was moved from Tallahassee Federal Jail in Florida to a low security prison, Bryan Prison Camp, which is 100 miles outside Houston in Texas. And the prison said that there are now genuine fears that she will be killed. Oh, please. She, coughed up some information and they did a nice little deal to move her to a cushier place where she can now walk around outside. Low category prison. And by the way, the type of people that she's now in with are white collar workers. So people who've done high fraud, not lowly blue collar workers, of course. And so what a source has said was as soon as Ghislaine spoke to the government, she was considered a snitch by other inmates at Tallahassee. There were very real and very credible threats on her life. Really? Not convinced. So she was moved in the early hours of Thursday morning in a 2-car convoy, apparently drove for 16 hours straight. And you know what? It's unprecedented for a convicted sex offender such as Maxwell, who was sentenced to 20 years, to be moved to a minimum security facility like Bryan, which has been nicknamed Camp Fed. I wonder why. And people are very unhappy. Certainly the family of Virginia Giuffre are absolutely outraged by what has been taking place. And Virginia Giuffre, probably the highest profile woman to claim that she was trafficked and abused by Epstein and his friends, including allegedly Prince Andrew. And Virginia, very sadly, took her life in April this year, although some people doubt whether she did actually take her life. And but the Giuffre family are absolutely furious about this particular move. And I think what's also interesting, by the way, is some of the information that's leaking out to do with Ghislaine and who she's been talking about. And she was certainly quizzed over 3 mystery Brits, who are said to be linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this was reported in the Mail on Sunday, who clearly has a source speaking to them, because they have been very pro let's get Ghislaine released. And these people are unnamed. You might be able to guess who they are. One is believed to be a high-profile public figure who had a long-running friendship with Epstein, which was viewed as a cause for concern. The other spent a lot of time at Epstein's various properties, including his infamous private Caribbean island, his townhouse in Manhattan, and his New Mexico ranch. 2 of the Brits that she was interviewed about are believed to have flown on the so-called Lolita Express, Epstein's private jet, several times. The third attended multiple dinners hosted by Epstein in New York and in Palm Beach. Investigators are said to have found an address book belonging to Epstein containing the names of more than 300 people from the UK. But isn't that just Epstein's black book? It feels like they're regurgitating news for us. The interrogation was said to have gone on for 9 hours. She was also grilled about the likes of kind of Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, and, quote, several billionaires. She's been given a limited immunity deal. It's a huge risk for her because apparently the case has become so politicized now. She only has immunity so long as she hasn't lied to them. She was asked about a huge list of people, including Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, Les Wexner, Bill Clinton, Alan Dershowitz, etc. And but we've reached a stage now where people are actually showing genuine sympathy for Ghislaine Maxwell. This is how people can be manipulated. People are like, why is she the only one imprisoned? And it's like, she's the only one in prison because it's a shite system and it shouldn't have happened, but it doesn't mean that she shouldn't be imprisoned. And as I say, Virginia Giuffre's family are deeply upset with what's been taking place. they said that it was shocking to hear President Trump invoke our sister and say that he was aware that Virginia had been stolen from Mar-a-Lago, because Trump had made this comment about how he believed Virginia had been stolen from Mar-a-Lago, his estate, you know, his kind of like golfing and hotels and all of that. And Virginia used to work there. And quite rightly, I'm sure Virginia Giuffre's family are in immense pain. It must be horrible what they are experiencing. And they said Ghislaine Maxwell is a monster who deserves to rot in prison for the rest of her life for the extraordinary violence and abuse she put not just our sister Virginia through, but many other survivors who may number in the thousands. A predator who thought only of herself. She destroyed the lives of girls and young women without conscience. Well, as you can imagine, the Maxwell family are not happy. And in fact, Ian Maxwell, one of Ghislaine's brothers, was given a platform on LBC to talk about Virginia Giuffre and say that he sheds no tear for her. And he said that she was a consummate liar who destroyed countless lives. He was speaking to Nick Ferrari, not a man who's necessarily known as being on top of true news, but certainly an establishment hack is Nick Ferrari. Oh, yes, he did. Yes, indeed, he is. And one of the things that Ian Maxwell said is very difficult for me to disagree with. He said that Virginia being considered a consummate liar was most conspicuously revealed when she had alleged that she had slept with Professor Alan Dershowitz, maintained it for many years, and then had to withdraw and desist. And that's true. That it did happen. She had said for many years that she had been trafficked to Alan Dershowitz, lawyer. And then she withdrew that and they settled the claim. And she said that she thought she might have been confused. And so they're obviously now using that against her. But it doesn't mean that the rest of the things that she said was a lie. It doesn't mean that. And also, by the way, let us not forget, she was still a young woman when all of this happened, and very traumatizing it would have been. So I doubt that she remembers every, spit going, frankly. And I just want to show you this image. This was captured yesterday. Wake Up's friend Andrew Loney has his new book coming out shortly on Prince Andrew entitled, and when I get back from my break, which I will take at the end of this week, Andrew will be joining us, but it's currently being serialized in the Daily Mail. And I noted this picture. Check this out, right? And this is just me. I could be completely wrong. But when I saw this picture, I was like, wait a second. Is Andrew actually morphing into Jeffrey Epstein? There's a picture here of Andrew, which was taken yesterday in Windsor in the car. And there's Jeffrey Epstein. And I think Andrew looks just like Jeffrey Epstein now. What do you think? What do you think, kids? Yes, Vape King, I agree. The elites are trying to normalize this BS slowly over time. Indeed. And that is what they're doing. And I just thought they looked alike. Total Nutter says the whole system is built on lies. It's why truth tellers are always persecuted. Indeed. Indeed. So yes, I think Andrew he does look like him, Lynn. He does. I think he does. A little bit, said No One's Flower. There you go. Right. Okay, guys, where are we up to? I want to bring in my first guest shortly. After that, I want to, if in between guests, but if not, I will certainly today talk about what the hell is going on with Tommy Robinson. What's going on with Tommy Robinson? I know he's currently backing Ben Habib's latest party, but is he on the run now? What happened? So we're going to talk about that from last week. And the fact that he's teamed up with Lawrence Fox, and the fact that he is promoting a free speech gathering in September. So we will be talking more about that. But in the meantime, and the other thing, of course, let's just say this before I bring in my guest. Have we heard about Lucy Connelly? Lucy Connelly, apparently she is due for release this month, possibly even this week. I've always considered Lucy Connelly a psyop, but not in terms of this being fake. I think what happened was that they made an example of her in order to be able to, it's a psychological operation in that respect. I believe that they made an example of her in order to be able to, chill the rest of us. Again, chilling our freedom of speech, sending that chilling effect out to all of us. Lucy Connelly, of course, is the former Conservative councillor's wife who was jailed over her tweet in the aftermath of the Southport murders, in July 2024. She's currently in HMP Peterborough, and she is going to be released shortly, subject to conditions. She was subject to 2.5 years in prison last October for publishing written material that incited racial hatred. Even though she deleted it within hours, nonetheless, it was deemed illegal and criminal, and she was imprisoned. And of course, Lucy's name is often invoked when people are talking about a two-tier society and two-tier Kia as one example. Lots of big names have rallied around Lucy, including like the Free Speech Union as one example, Dan Wootton, journalist Alison Pearson. And it's been very interesting. And critics argued that her punishment did not fit the crime. You've also had Suella Braverman, former Home Secretary, saying that she was a victim of politicized two-tier justice system. Well, Braverman should know, frankly. In May, Connelly lost her appeal against the sentence at the Court of Appeal, with Lord Justice Holroyd rejecting the suggestion that it was manifestly excessive. I'm sorry, my lord, I disagree with you. And I think many of us do. And of course, there's been lots of opportunism around this, including reform as one example, which some people believe reform is linked up to the whole thing and the psychological operation. And that's not impossible. And you had mealy mouth Richard Tice, who visited Lucy, allegedly, apparently. I mean, we've got nothing other than him standing outside of prison to say that that actually happened. And he visited her. And he also has kind of jumped on the bandwagon. He said that she'd been mistreated in jail, manhandled without provocation. And there you go. And as I say, there's an interesting cast of characters who have been around Lucy Connelly. And these cast of characters, where are they when people have been in prison for not having a TV license or stealing a bottle of water? Where have they been? Because those have been excessive. And also these, I mean, we have so many issues, obviously, with our law and imprisonment in the UK. And Lucy Connelly's case has even been discussed in the White House, for goodness sake. And you can see why people would say that it's a psyop, right? Because who gets that much attention? Right. On that note, I'm going to bring in my first guest. I can see her. Here she is. Oh, wait, there she is. Hello, Tally.
Good morning, Sonia. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, really, really good. It's a lovely day here. Look, really nice and sunny.
Right, for anybody who's just logging in, and it is not the best image that we've got there, but the reason for that may well be that Talis is currently in southern Spain, aren't you, love?
I am, yeah.
So we can hear you clearly, and actually it's great. It's all perfect. Talis, you contacted me, didn't you, after I'd had a conversation about, or rather after I talked about 7/7. 7/7 is the term that we use for the British terrorist attack of the 7th of July. And you, like many people, had many questions about it. But you pointed out to me that you've been writing a number of crime books, or rather on Kindle, which you're publishing on Kindle. I'm having one of those days already. But what's interesting is not only your subject matter, but you've been using AI, right, to do this. Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Well, it's a bit bittersweet, really, because in one sense, AI has just taken my job. So I wasn't getting any work through at all, and I thought, what's going on? And it turns out that my job has actually been now taken over by AI. So while I was sat there doing nothing, I decided to put AI to use and start doing all these books that I've had in my head for more years than I care to mention.
Are you attracted to crime? It's a huge genre, isn't it?
It is. I've got a bit of a problem with true crime. I think most single women do, don't they? I'm not sure why.
That's an interesting statement. Why would you say that? What makes you say that?
It just seems like from my research, a lot of women in general seem to watch true crime. Maybe it makes us feel a bit safer. I don't know. But yeah, I do follow true crime quite a lot. I've been following the King Road murders quite heavily for the last, it's coming up to 3 years now. He's obviously just taken a plea deal. But I think that's very strategic in what he's doing, because now he can appeal how the case was actually handled. And it's the same as in the 7/7. There are so many inconsistencies.
Let me just stop you there a second, because there'll be some people going, what? The what road murders? Because I'd never heard of this either. And this is obviously something of great interest to you, the King Road murders. And you've examined it. An objective examination of the case on the road to confession. Really fascinating stuff. And as you say, and when we had a brief conversation yesterday, you noted, and you've just noted again there, that there are often similarities, aren't there, between these great mysteries. So talk to us about the King Road murders for those who don't know.
So on the November the 13th, 2022, 4 college students, university students, were murdered in their off-campus home. Crime happened about 4 o'clock in the morning, and within 20 minutes, all 4 of them were dead. There were 2 surviving roommates. No 911 call was made for 8 hours, even though it's quite evident that the roommates that were there, they must have heard. I mean, you're talking 4 people being murdered. And there's just so many inconsistencies in it. How they've managed to get him into court, and just the proof isn't there. For me, the proof isn't there. If I was on the jury, I don't think I would have convicted him beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm not saying he wasn't involved. He could well be involved, but I find it very, very highly unlikely that one person can do that in 15 minutes, the way that they're saying, with no DNA on them, no DNA in their car, no DNA in the apartment where he lived. I mean, it's bizarre. The only bit of DNA evidence that they found was touch DNA, which can actually be transferred from anywhere. I mean, if you go to the supermarket and you pick something up, and then somebody else buys it and puts that in the house, then your DNA is in their house. And it's such a minuscule amount of DNA that was found on the snap of this leather sheath. Nothing else was there at all.
So and was he convicted? This is Brian Kohberger you're talking about, right?
Kohberger. Yeah, well, he's always maintained his innocence, and his defence team were very on it as well. You know, he's innocent. He's definitely not done this. And then out of the blue, he turned around and pleaded guilty. And I think it's a strategic move, because the courts weren't allowing any alternative perpetrators. They were arguing against any of the evidence that the defence put up. And like I say, I mean, when it went to court, they were actually lying about stuff that had already been proven in pre-trial hearings. You know, we're supposed to believe that the roommates were asleep, even though we've got logs of them logging into Indeed, Snapchat, Facebook, messaging. You know, they weren't asleep. So why aren't they in trouble for not calling 911? I mean, 8 hours. That's a long time.
It's extraordinary. When I started to look into it, albeit briefly yesterday, I was like, this is an extraordinary case. And I don't know how it had passed me by, because it's scandalous in so many respects. So what we're led to believe then is that one person is responsible for the obliteration of 4 students. The people close by didn't hear anything, and nobody made any calls to the authorities for 8 hours. This very curious, reminds me almost of the Madeleine McCann case, how long it took them to call the authorities then. You know?
That's a book in progress at the moment.
Oh, is it? So talk to me about your other work then. Obviously, I want to talk a little bit about 7/7. What was it about 7/7 that when you heard me talking, you decided to write to me?
Well, I was already actually doing the book at the time when you came on and talked about it. And I think we follow the same people. I was very intrigued with Nick Colostrum and all of the work that he did. And obviously the man who did 7/7 Ripple Effect, Maudie. You know, just when you see the evidence isn't there. It changes. It constantly changes. And what I was very, very intrigued about was the Peter Power.
Yes.
On at the time.
Yeah,
it's
the
in the same
additional
sentence.
testing, that was taking place, right? Okay, yes, very
Yeah.
interesting. And what was also interesting was he came on, didn't he, almost immediately that morning, unsolicited. He was
Straight
immediately
away.
telling media, we were
Yeah,
there, we were running exercises at exactly the same stations. Tell
exactly
us,
the same stations.
what is the chance, though? Like on a
It's about,
statistical level, what is the
it's
chance?
it's about a 1 in 3.5 billion of a chance that you would have the exact stations. And the fact that he was also involved in the panorama thing as well, which was, I think, a year before that, wasn't it? About 14 months.
Interesting, isn't
Um,
it? I mean, the whole
yeah,
thing is interesting, but why do you think people are so willing to accept official narratives when there are clearly so many questions still to be asked?
because they just shut people down. And if you do question it, then you're a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, or you're against the government, or you're saying that it didn't happen. We all know that it happened. I've spoken to first responders who still suffer PTSD from what they witnessed on those tube trains. So, we know that it happened. We know everything that was going on. But when you start digging deeper and you look into it and you find, there were drills being run, there were things that were on the TV 14 months before, basically saying this is what's going to happen, but then not to have any security. I mean, I find that bizarre. Like, we've had a long history of threats from the IRA, for example. No bombs, no sniffer dogs, nothing. To me, it beggars belief.
It's almost like it was allowed to happen, wasn't
Yeah,
it? In some respects. But
exactly.
are you saying, because Nick thinks that the 4 young men who are accused of it are completely innocent, they were absolute patsies, is that where you're coming from?
I think so. I mean, the most interesting one of them for me, the bombers, is Jermaine Lindsay.
He was the
Um,
recent convert, wasn't he? He was the convert to Islam.
he was, yeah, and I mean, I've spoken to somebody who knew him, actually went to school with him, and by all accounts, he wasn't much like a devout Muslim, so he must have really changed. But I find it, nothing was returned. No body was seen. Nobody was returned back to the family. And I think he actually went missing the night before. His wife didn't see him. She went into labour and actually gave birth to their second son, and she didn't see him after that point.
She went into labour when he was said to be exploding on the London Underground. I didn't realise that. And of course,
Yeah,
she's been what do they call her? The White
the
Widow or
white widow.
something. They've been after
Yeah,
her forever, haven't they?
yeah. And why is it taking so long? I mean, apparently we can just fly a drone in and blow anybody up. But why is it taking so long? I mean, she's now got 4 children. So she's a woman with 4 children. You really, you can't find her.
What do you think as a bigger picture? Because people always say to me, yeah, but because it's very hard for decent people to imagine how awful some people are and what they're capable of doing to the rest of humanity, right? So they can't put themselves, and I don't blame them. Who wants to be able to see inside the mind of a mad person? Okay, so I completely get that. But in terms of like big pictures, what do you think that was all about then? If we were sold a hoax, what do you think 7/7 was all about?
It was just to bring us into the war, keep the war efforts going, because we all know war is money on either side for the governments. They don't actually care about the people. I don't think they care about the people. We're just numbers, to be honest. And so that's what it was about. It's kind of like 9/11, isn't it? When you start looking into that and the
Sure.
inconsistencies and everything else, and it was all just designed to bring us into a war. That's what I think.
As a crime writer, do you look into, why they do false flag operations and other false flag operations as well?
Yeah, I've always been interested in it. I mean, I used to watch a lot of Nick Colostrum and Richard D. Hall, probably to the point of obsession at times. And so, when you really, really look into these false flags, it is just for control. It is to control the population, keep people in fear, and you've got control.
We're surrounded by it, though, aren't we? I opened the show talking about this Online Safety Act, which is really about clamping down on people. And then the protests that are happening around the UK, and there's dispersal. We're not even allowed to assemble anymore. There's dispersal notices, and you have to be off the streets by 8:30 p.m. And it's awful. We've lost our ranking as being one of the top 5 nations for freedom of speech. This is in a global chart. It's outrageous. And Keir Starmer's just a figurehead, isn't he? He's not the big boss.
They never are. They never are. There's always somebody behind the scenes. You know, they're just the puppets. It doesn't matter which party you vote in. They all do the same.
Yes, exactly. They do. I don't understand why people think that we are going to vote our way out of this. We're not. They're all the same. I mean, sooner or later, they might start off saying, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to clamp down on this. But sooner or later, they realize which side their bread is buttered, and they don't, do they? And so that is the reality. It's difficult. And also, I don't ever want to lose myself to kind of like the heaviness and the depression that comes from that sense of helplessness of all these awful things happening around us. So how do you keep your head when you're delving into these subjects? Because it's hard. You're looking at dark topics.
Yeah, no, I have to have a break and go and do some singing or something, because I sing here as well. So I just go off and just, clear my brain for a bit and then come back to it, because sometimes you can get really, really angry. I mean, the 9/11 is probably the one that makes me the angriest.
Right? Why? Why?
Just the sheer amount of people that were just obliterated, and the story that then came out, and anything that you question, you put down. Oh no, you're questioning the government. How dare you question the government? It's like, but the evidence isn't stacking up here. It's not. And I mean, the 9/11.
I consider it a gateway. Yeah. Because the thing is, once people are able to get their head around the idea that 9/11 isn't as told, I think it opens up the sort of avenue for people to consider other things as well that clearly are not as told. And I think we have to be absolutely realistic that much of our history is a lie. That's the truth. It's been created by the victors, who are not necessarily the truth tellers, but it is the people usually with the largest army, the most money on our side, using our money against us. The stuff that happens online when people like you and I get attacked for telling truth, that's also coordinated. It's coordinated and financed oftentimes by our money. I was talking about they've got this new social media following the 77th. Do you remember the 77th Brigade that emerged around C19 and they were tracking people? Well, now they've got their new little online army, which they say they're looking out for signs of unrest. No, they're not. They're looking out for signs of dissent. People who are speaking out against the government. That's a big difference, isn't it?
Well, you're not allowed to say anything, and they clamp down on it, on everything, and there's never proper inquiries into things. I mean, look at the Grenfell Tower. It's just, let's move along. That didn't happen. Let's move along. People want answers. How are these allowed to happen? Why is it allowed to happen?
And the problem is in situations like Grenfell as well, is that there are settlements that take place which immediately create silence, because there are often NDAs attached to settlements. And so we often never get to the truth of it either. You're absolutely right. Move us along. But you mentioned somebody who is always of great interest to me, and that is Madeleine McCann. And you said you're interested in that. So was Madeleine McCann abducted, in your opinion, Talis?
No, in my opinion, she died in that apartment. The evidence shows that she died in that apartment. I don't know why they've been allowed to cover it up for as long, and why so many people got involved and the government got involved. I mean, it's just unprecedented. Everything with that case seems to be unprecedented. And if you say anything about it, you get sued. Well, no, you should be allowed to question it. And why are we still paying? Why are we still paying for a search? I mean, we're talking now 13 million to find... Easily,
because when they give us the figures of like 13, 14 million, they are not adding to that what happened prior to them setting up Operation Graange, right? Which cost a significant amount of money. They do this, they play fast and loose because they want the public to believe that it's not as expensive a job. This is a cover-up, in my opinion. I've said it at length, really. And I'm not quite sure when it's going to end. Do you feel, as I do, that the reason that Operation Graange continues is because it enables us not to ask too many probing questions, or why does it continue?
I have no idea why it's still continuing. I mean, you think about all the children that go missing every year. I mean,
I know.
And you don't hear about them. They don't get the money that the McCanns have had. And what I don't agree with is that the McCanns never faced anything from that. From how can you be a doctor? And I used to work in the NHS. I used to actually be child protection secretary. Now I had to have up to level 3 training in safeguarding of children. They would have had to do the same. So one of the things that if we hear something on the phone, we're supposed to report it. You are told don't leave children, especially 3 children under the age of 4, in an apartment by themselves. Not just because they might get abducted, but what about if one of them climbed out the car?
Well, exactly.
How can you be sure that they were going to stay asleep and not do anything? And also, why didn't they use child monitors? Only one family had a baby monitor. I mean, my mom used a baby monitor with my brother back in 1986. So It's not like this is new technology, and it would have proved the distance. I just don't understand why they weren't done for child neglect at the very least.
Well, I can tell you why. So, because local politicians in Portugal said that they were very sympathetic to the family about what had taken place. And there was also pressure, obviously, from British politicians, from the Prime Minister's office. We know that as well. And so there were all these outside influences that crept into place. But they should have, at the very least, although some people say those children were never left alone, that they had to say they were left alone in order to be able to create the idea that they had been abducted. Do you think that has legs as a crime writer?
I think it definitely could. I mean, when you start looking into the last official sightings of Madeleine, you can go actually days back. And the last photo that was supposedly taken couldn't have been the last photo because of the weather conditions on that day.
There's a lot of problems with it.
It just, there's so many problems with the case. And the parents, how they acted. I mean, why don't you ask the dogs? Yeah. Well, we did ask the dogs.
Yeah. And the dog said this.
Both of them. Yeah. So to me, it just seems bizarre that we're still looking for her. Why haven't they searched all the wells? I mean, we have it here in Spain, lots and lots of abandoned old wells. Well, if you put somebody down there, they're not being found for a very, very long time.
Well, they have, haven't they? They've done quite a lot of different searches going on to do with Christian Bruckner and Germany, which again is a patsy in my opinion. And
they just want a reason to put him back inside, I think.
That's right, exactly. They just don't want him out on the streets. And who can blame them in some respects?
Well, yeah.
Absolute heinous character, but it's still not okay to convict him of a crime that he's not responsible for. And that, of course, the moment that they have him, that lets everybody else off the hook. I can never get over the fact that the family and the friends were able to essentially say no to a reconstruction. I find that astonishing. They got away with so much. They absolutely did. So interesting stuff, Talis. Thank you. Really good to have you with us. What's the weather like in Spain at the moment?
Oh, it's about 34 degrees here. I don't know whether you can see behind me. Blue skies and
looks.
Skies and sun.
Oh, gorgeous. Before you go, just because I mentioned this to you yesterday, this whole thing about the floods that have been taking place in Spain as one example. How much do you think that has been impacted by Spain's sort of fulsome acceptance of the net zero policies?
Well, to be fair, I think the weather, you can kind of predict it when you see the planes the day before because They do tend to spray the air with stuff, don't they? And then the next day you get floods, and that's happened quite a few times. And this is actually one of the reasons that I moved from the UK, because they weren't really spraying the skies here. Over the last couple of years, I've noticed a big difference, and that's where we've had this extreme weather.
Right.
Right.
Interesting. Lovely to have you with us, everybody. This is the author, Talis Keaton. You can find her work on Kindle. I will put a link in the description so you can access some of it. Lovely to have you with us. And I'm so glad. And you know what? As you've taught, the picture cleared as well. That's interesting as well, because we did a test yesterday, but it's lovely. I can see you lovely and clear now. And I've heard you brilliantly all the way throughout. Have a lovely week, darling. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. You too.
Talis, everybody. Wonderful. Wonderful. Take care of yourself. Lovely to have you with us. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. Right. Where am I? Before I go to my next guest, I want to refer back to the story of Tommy Robinson. What on earth's going on with Tommy Robinson? So I think we all saw these images, right, from last week. And this is where Robinson allegedly assaulted a man at St Pancras Station in London last week. Viral footage everywhere showing the apparent victim lying unresponsive on the floor. We were then told that Tommy Robinson caught an early morning flight from Stansted to Tenerife, despite being flagged as wanted by police nearly 5 hours earlier. What went on there? Well, apparently he was allowed to go through at the departure gate by Ryanair staff. The police alert was raised after he booked the flight and checked in online. And UK airline officials are not obliged to check whether a traveller is wanted for suspected criminality immediately before they are embarking. So that's interesting in itself, I think. Tommy Robinson was apparently in London because he was giving out flyers for this free speech rally that he is organising on September the 13th. And he tweeted, there's only one place to be, and that's central London. We won't just be uniting the kingdom, but the world. We have the biggest speakers from all corners of the world, united in one place in a show of patriotism. Well, probably that and Zionism, if I know Tommy Robinson, because it is very much, when you go to these rallies now, it is very much on behalf of Israel, which kind of neatly brings me into my next guest very, very shortly. But I see that Tommy is now linked up with Laurence Fox, which is a hiding to nothing, because whatever you think about Tommy Robinson, he does have very loyal supporters, and Laurence Fox isn't in the same kind of place as he is. Laurence Fox is somebody I've been a critic of Tommy Robinson for a very long time, and I appreciate what he's done regarding the issues of grooming gangs. I do. I appreciate that. But people like Laurence Fox, they're just opportunists. Fox has no great passion for anything other than jumping on bandwagons and saying outrageous stuff and having his sons do blackface, and then he posts that online. So he's somebody who likes to create outrage because he clearly needs all the attention. He was back in court last week trying to get a cost order against him for defamation reduced. I'm not quite sure how that's going. I don't think that's yet been announced whether he's succeeded on that. But in terms of Tommy Robinson, I don't actually know where he is. Does any of the people in the live chat know where Tommy Robinson is? Sneeve Ron says Tommy and Paul Goldin are both paid actors. So Paul Goldin, isn't he from like Britain's First or whatever? It's horrible organizations. I would never be involved in any of these things. I would never go to any of these rallies. This is nothing that I want to be involved with at all. MB says he's in Tel Aviv. Interesting. Very interesting. On holiday, says Nikki. He's on holiday. So, but I would suggest after that happened, probably the best thing to have done would not be to leave the country. It would probably be to hang around, because I'm sure being Tommy Robinson is probably very difficult I think he was on his lonesome as well. There didn't appear necessarily to be anybody with him. He appeared to be on his own. So I'm sure that it can be quite dangerous sometimes being Tommy Robinson. Phil said, Tommy's in Tenerife. Sneeve Ron said, Fox is more of a vegetable than a plant. I can see where this is going, people. Let me just read a couple of the comments that came in earlier. And we were talking about the two-tier legal society in the UK. And Emma said that she saw a girl get arrested for stealing Tampax. That should never happen, ever. And Sean said, absolutely nobody should spend a day in jail for voicing an opinion, and that includes Lucy. I understand. Sean, I get you. I get you. But we all know where this is leading to. And thank you for people on the live chat. You are wonderful for the coffee. Simon says, for coffee, not Starbucks, as if I'd go to Starbucks. Do you remember when Starbucks gave money to Mermaids, the charity, the gender charity, which I will be talking about at length this Friday, because my investigation this Friday is based on 6 years of investigating the whole trans agenda. So I will be talking about that on Friday. But thank you so much for the super chats, Kath, Simon, and Randy. You people are stars, and thank you for being here. I don't know where we're going here. Right, people, I want to bring in my next guest. This is really interesting stuff. We talk frequently around here about what is going on in the Middle East, as indeed we should. I certainly believe as a journalist, I have an obligation to highlight what is going on around the world, regardless of what sort of compromises other British journalists may be subject to at this moment in time. And I want to thank you so much, Swiss Miss, for that super sticker. You're a star. And I want to talk to my next guest, somebody I've known for years, actually. So I don't want to delay in bringing him in. A very interesting character. Let's bring him in. Here he is. Good morning, Simon Harris.
Good morning, Sonia Poulton. Sonia P, as you used to be known.
Indeed I did. And the reason that he says Sonia P is because Simon knew me from when I was a hip hop journalist. Now, I have to tell you, and I cannot overstate this, Simon is somewhat music royalty. And he completely downplays his role in the British music scene. He was part of Music of Life. He was the producer. Music of Life was the UK's first hip hop label. Absolutely brilliant stuff was coming out of Music of Life, including the Demon Boys, including Derek B, including Asher D, Daddy Freddie. You were absolutely at the forefront of it all, Simon. I take my hat off to you.
You know your history, Sonia. You really do.
Of course I do, because you were a production star then and now. You really were. And I think it was interesting because you, like me, clearly you're white. And unlike me, you're a British Jew. I'm not. And it was very political, wasn't it, when we were involved in hip hop? So you would have dealt with some stuff.
Most people seem to introduce me as Simon Harris, Bass, how low can you go? Which is, it's been so long since that as well.
Brilliant stuff. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Now, people may be disappointed to hear I haven't actually brought Simon here to discuss his music career, because we're going to do that another time. But we're going to discuss about the issue of the Middle East, about what it means to be a British Jew, about why Simon has changed his thoughts and his perspective on what is taking place in the Middle East. Simon, prior to October the 7th, which is largely seen as the most recent time when the conflict started in 2023, what were your opinions on what was taking place in the Middle East?
Well, I just, like most British Jews, and actually most British Jews, I think, probably are very content to just stay with that, with the opinion. You listen to what you're told and don't challenge anything. And I didn't. I just kind of passively went along my whole life that Israel were the good guys, the Arabs are the bad guys. We're the chosen people. Israel is, everything. I'd never actually been there, by the way. But I am not a practicing Jew, but I go back as far as my family. Both parents are Jewish. My grandparents, my roots go all the way back to Poland. I never considered my roots going back to Israel. Like I say, it's somewhere I'd never been to. But certainly a few hundred years back to Poland. And, I just kind of passively went along with, the whole thing. And more recently, even leading up to October 7th, the rise of anti-Semitism and how difficult it is for the British Jews. Now, just me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, and I'm not an expert on this, but the anti-Semitism is not something that I have seen. I've always found the UK a very welcoming place, very diverse place, and I've always enjoyed, I've got friends, all races, all cultures, and when the October the 7th thing happened, I just saw it as, first of all, I was shocked, of course, like everybody. I don't like seeing anything awful happen like that, and it was absolutely terrible. But I've seen this, the way that Israel responded initially has happened many times before. You know, they've gone into Lebanon, and yeah, I remember 10 years before that they flattened Lebanon and everything, and I just didn't think it was going to be something which would be ongoing as long as it has been, and as out of proportion as it has been, in my opinion.
So the approach, as always, which you're talking about there, is the way that Israel takes a sledgehammer to crack a nut, right?
Absolutely,
It's
yeah.
that absolute all out. But what about the international support? Because, as one example,
Mm.
when the recent mayor of New York was kind of fighting to get in, he's a Muslim guy.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 of the people that he was up against said the first trip that they would take would be to Israel. Why do you think there is this Israel first, not only in the UK, but in the US as well?
I think it's the way the world has changed is because of social media, because now we're seeing everything live streaming. And the first thing I did, you know, was I was horrified, and I put on my Facebook page, I stand with Israel, and I put the Israeli flag.
Right.
You know, just because I've gone along with this whole thing for years, you know, about the amount of anti-Semitism, and how the self-hating Jews, and how Roger Waters is so anti-Semitic from Pink Floyd. You know, Miriam Margolyes, what an awful person. Blah blah blah. Without thinking about it, people like to be told what they want to hear, and I wasn't interested in really getting involved in it, to be honest. But as things have progressed, I've learned more and more. And I just thought to myself, after it happened, when things started to get a little bit too much, I thought, you know what I'm going to do for the first time in my life, I'm going to spend a few days just going back and doing some research and looking into the
Wow.
history of things that
Wow.
I'd never bothered to, you know, never once. And I look back and I discovered, I don't know whether some of your viewers are probably going to be switching off. Oh my God, you know, he's
I-
anti-Semitic or something. But, you know, I look back and I discovered the Balfour Agreement, which was the agreement that the British government, Lord Balfour signed a declaration. It's not an
Mhm.
agreement, actually. It was a declaration at the end of the First World War. And if you want to know about the way the First World War, you know, it was Lawrence of Arabia. You know, we were all over the Middle East, colonialism, the British Empire, and then it was owned. It was administered. Palestine, what is now the state of Israel, was administered by the UK as British mandated Palestine at the end of this agreement. But the agreement the declaration, I'm sorry, the declaration explicitly said that, and don't quote me word for word, that the existing people in Palestine must not be affected by this, which is something that was broken pretty quickly because militias were sent over there as the amount of Jewish people started to migrate from Eastern Europe between the First and Second World War. And they were treated, the existing residents, of which there were many. Certainly wasn't a land without a people for a people without a land. They were treated pretty badly, and they started to be pushed into what is now Gaza, of course.
Right. So you're not keen on the settler mentality I'm taking from
Oh,
that. The look on your
yeah,
face.
yeah. I mean, you know, I think it doesn't do Jews all over the world any kind of service to see the things that are going on, to see armed militias now, which are the settlers, to be going into the West Bank,
Right.
you know, and soon to be going into Gaza. Um, you know, were backed up by the Israeli Defense Force, which used to be those militias and eventually turned into the Israeli Defense Force. Um, and essentially kicking people out of their homes and saying, this is our house now, get out. You know, I think there's so many shameful things aside from the awful scenes that we're seeing with the starvation of children
Oh,
and the genocide, and it is a genocide. You know,
thank you for saying so. Yes, indeed it
yeah,
is.
um, it's all shocking to me, and it's the real problem is America, isn't it? For backing this, we're also complicit. The UK in sending the arms over that are used to kill these people, and you know, these are a lot. Like I say, a lot of these things are just my perspective. I still respect my Jewish family and friends. If this is not their perspective, I would hope that they would stand with me and say this is a genocide and it needs to stop. I just want to see peace, and I want to see the Palestinians have their own state alongside Israel. You know,
This is huge. This is like some sort of Damascene conversion that you've experienced.
yeah.
How
I think that you've got
huge?
my position is that it disappoints me when people won't admit they're wrong. You know, if I'm wrong about some things, I say things like Brexit. I was unfortunately right about. I said it was going to be awful, and it is. You know, some things I'm wrong about, and if I'm wrong about something, then the first thing I want to do is put my hands up and say I was wrong about that. But from today onwards, you know, today is the first day of the rest of your life. Turn things around now and get things right from now on. So from now on, you know, this is my position. I've changed my position. I'm not saying that other people have. I mean, I see the Jewish Chronicle every week because my lovely next door neighbor gives it to me for my mother who's got dementia and she wants the Jewish Chronicle. So I see what they write in there, and it's so racist, and it's just the attitude has to change, I think. You know, and as this
Attitude.
unfolds, I think it will, hopefully.
What is that attitude that you're pinpointing there?
We're the chosen people, and this is our land, and there's no equality between us and the Arabs, the Palestinians. They don't even like to say the word Palestinian.
No, but also I have to wonder whether what we're dealing with is, because I don't necessarily think what we're dealing with is Jews, but Zionists.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know what? A lot of people don't know the difference. They don't know there is a difference between Jewish and
Huge difference,
Zionist.
and actually to
Huge,
conflate
yeah.
the two is
Yeah.
actually anti-Semitic.
Absolutely. If anything, it's misusing the whole Jewish, you know, the religion. It's
Yes.
by saying Zionism, because Zionism is a brand new thing. It's a political movement
It is a
that
political
this
movement.
guy invented at the end of the 19th century. He just wrote it in a pamphlet, and it became the Zionism became the reason for the Jews returning to their homeland from wherever they are. But it's turned into taking their homeland back, you know,
Right.
which may
By
be
any
something
means
that we used to
necessary.
do back then, but certainly not something we should be doing now. We certainly shouldn't be. You know, I don't like to see Israel and the settlers expanding beyond their borders. They don't seem to have respect for borders, and you know, and the amount of fighting that's going across the borders into Syria and Lebanon, you know, and attacking Yemen. It's something that I wish wasn't happening. I really do.
It's painful. It really is. How have
Yeah.
people around you taken to your new perspective, Simon?
Well, when I first started this, you know, I was, because I do a lot of social media. You can find me everywhere. You know, the first thing I put was ceasefire now, and that was a big trigger for a lot of people. Just ceasefire now. Just stop bombing. You know, that was the first ceasefire, and I thought, oh my God, you know, am I going to get called a self-hating Jew, which is the term, or they call it. Yeah, self-hating Jew or self-loathing Jew. Americans use the term,
Oof,
which is
oof.
a Jewish, you know, the terrible thing, a Jewish person who doesn't respect the state of Israel. You know, then it's like, am I going to get called anti-Semitic? Then it's, am I going to be accused of you know, being sympathizing with Hamas? You know what? Bring it on. Anybody can call me anything you want. Nothing offends me. Other people, I know a lot of people get offended at things, but with me, I don't care, honestly, what people
I
think of
think
me.
the ability to change one's mind about something so important is really brave, Simon, and that's
Well, I wasn't
reflected in
thinking
the
of it like
comments.
that, but the bigger the
No,
issue, I think you should, you know, and like I say, I'm not lecturing anybody, and there are people this is going to upset, but I just think whatever it is, if you discover you're wrong about something, why not just change position and say, you know what, I was wrong about that. I'm gonna sort it out from now on, you know, within myself. kind of thing.
Wonderful. And I have to echo what Simon has said in our comments, and because he said difficult discussions need to be had. He's very proud that we're having this conversation because we're all trying to find our way through. I think for the most part, Simon, and I don't know whether you think this or not, but I think for the most part, human beings do the best they can in the circumstances that they frequently find themselves in.
Yeah,
For the most
yeah.
part, I don't believe that most human beings are malicious by nature or want to
No,
create
not at all.
problems for other people. And
It's
sometimes,
more a comfort thing, isn't it? It's
right,
more of a like, well, you know what? I've had this position for years. My parents, they think of their parents and they think of their grandparents, you know, being Jewish, and we've got friends in Israel. Oh my God, and all that kind of stuff. I think the people who think like that are being used by this far right government and by the whole Zionist thing. They know we've got them. It's a form of I don't like to say brainwashing because that is insulting to people who believe these things, but persuasion. I feel like a lot of people being hoodwinked and bamboozled into supporting what is now going on, which you can see clearly if you just go on TikTok. And I'm on all, like I say, I'm on all the socials, and I see these horrendous things happening day after day, unfortunately proving my position to be right now, that what's going on is just so awful.
it is awful, and the facts speak for themselves. They are in violation of international humanitarian law. Netanyahu is wanted by international courts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All around the world, attack. You know, if you criticize Israel in America, you're getting deported. In the UK, you are, you know, deemed anti-Semitic. You're subject to all manner of issues. So it is evident for us all to see that
And
something
the cover-ups,
is really wrong.
is something I
Talk
can't
about
stand.
that.
That the media is, you know, BBC, Sky News, and everything. One by one, these Israeli spokespeople are paraded out,
Right.
and they're parroting what they've got to be told. You know, and also the Israeli ambassador and everything. They keep coming out. It's like, how long is this going to go on? How long do they think? You know, I feel like there are. You know, I don't like to mention the Holocaust in any, you know, but there were people living next door to the camps that didn't know what was going on, and there were people next door to the camps that turned a blind eye to it. And we mustn't be like that. I think we've got to say, wait a minute, this is wrong. We're going to hold these people to account. And within myself, that's all I did, was I thought, from now on, I'm going to hold this situation to account, not go along with it anymore. You know, it was just my own moral peace of mind
More
as well.
power to your elbow, and it reinforces exactly why I supported you and your work, you know, years ago, because I saw that in you. Marco says
Oh, thank you.
Marco says this is a great, brave, mature, and honest conversation. Such a great guest, and I
Oh, that's
have to
nice,
agree.
thank you.
Now, Simon, regarding that and the fact that we, you know, the media appears to be captured. We talked briefly yesterday about outside influences, and one of them being Friends of Israel. What are your thoughts about Friends of Israel and our political system?
Well, it's part of the politics, isn't it? I mean, we have the Labour Friends of Israel that are so deeply controlling what Keir Starmer is doing, and David Lammy, and in America, the AIPAC. There are also the questions of family connections from the leaders. I mean, you have Donald Trump, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is very close to Benjamin Netanyahu. And over here, my understanding is that Sir Keir Starmer's wife has family in Israel, and she's Jewish. So this
Correct.
is, I'm not saying that that is the reason, but there certainly seems to be. I feel there needs to be questions raised of the leaders' personal connections to what is happening and the reason that they're supporting it. I would just ask anybody that, don't listen to me, I'm not an expert, but do yourself a favor. If you're not on TikTok, go on TikTok, and I'm not saying subject yourself to a lot of these videos, but if you do, you will see a lot more of what's happening out there. And also try and do your own research. Don't believe the mainstream media all the time. Look through as many news sources as you can, and then maybe you can connect your own dots, because Simon Harris is not an expert. I'm just explaining what's happened with myself. That's all.
You're an intelligent man who
Thank you.
has been invested in it to a certain degree all your life, and then you took the opportunity to look at the other side. I think
Yeah, I
that
supported
takes
it for 60
courage.
years. Yeah,
Wow.
I did, passively, not, actively, but yeah.
I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing what you've actually subjected yourself to, because you would also
Thank
have
you.
to, when we do that, it can be very painful, because then we realize a kind of like a potential mountain of lies that we've built our views on, and unpacking that in itself can be very painful. So more power to your elbow, Simon.
Thank you, Sonia.
This has been going on all of our lifetime and
Yeah.
more besides. Is it going to end in our lifetime? Do you think an agreement is going to be reached, or is there not really the true willing?
I don't know, but I think maybe things can change after Trump is out of office, and after Benjamin Netanyahu is out of office. But the unfortunate and awful thing is that a lot of people are going to die in that period. A lot of Palestinians are going to be perishing, and we're seeing desperate situations. That doctors who've just got back from Gaza, describing the most awful things. So it's just very, very painful to watch the whole thing, but maybe we're all learning something for the future.
Indeed. Love that very much. Simon, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Wake Up. I'm going to bring you back next time,
Thank
and
you, Sonia.
we're going to talk about British music and more besides. Everybody,
I'd love it.
I,
Anything. Yeah.
you've been a wonderful guest,
Yeah.
absolute wonderful guest, and we've loved having you. Everybody, this is what I consider a super producer, Simon Harris.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take good care of yourself, Simon. Thanks
You
for being
too.
with
Thank you,
us.
Sonia. Thank you.
Lovely. Wonderful. And thank you all for your fantastic comments. I can see them all here. Brilliant stuff. Really appreciate it. I saw somebody say, would you so-called awakened ones be prepared to do a deep dive into Islam? Yes. Yes, I actually said this. I've been researching this after I did the infiltration of Zionism via the Friends of Israel. I said, a part 2 on this about infiltration will be about Islam. Because here's the thing. I started off talking, when I opened the show, I said that we are living in a kind of low faith society, and we are. And sometimes that's reflected in comments by people who don't know me, right? People who jump on and they just think, oh, that's not right. And the kind of comments I'm talking about is when you get people going, oh, she deliberately ignored my question. That's a low faith comment, people. I don't deliberately ignore anybody or am I compromised at all. So what I attempt to do with our comment section is actually build a high trust that I am doing my damnedest to try and get to as many comments as possible. And if I happen not to see your comment, it's not because I've decided that I have an agenda against your comment. And the same applies about a dig deep into Islam. But the reality is this: in the week since I started to look into that, and please feel free, the person who said this, please feel free to contact me if you want to give me leads. But in the week since I said I was going to do about the Muslim and Islam infiltration of the UK in terms of, like political influences, etc., I have not found the degree or anywhere near actually anything like what's going on in terms of Zionism. And that's just a fact. Now, that could just be because I haven't found it yet. And I said this before, but if you feel you have that information, send it to me. Sonia Poulton at sky.com. I do not have a dog in any race other than the race of truth. Simple stuff. Really simple stuff. Right. Also, moving on, wasn't Simon a great guest? I have absolute respect for Simon, what he did in terms of British music. Absolutely brilliant. And yes, he did do Bass, How Low Can You Go? Brilliant song. Right, want to move on just briefly, actually. Did you see last week that Lloyds Bank was down, right? The app was crashing on payday for British people. And then there were thousands of people stranded at, I think, Stansted Airport as well. Look, how many times do we have to keep repeating? And I don't need to repeat this, obviously, to Wake Up viewers, but in the event that there'll be somebody passing who isn't aware of this, we have to do everything we can to resist the digital ID and cashless society. How many more warnings do we need that we will be unable to access our own money? We will be grounded, all the things that are very intentional. And it really deeply concerns me that people just seem to keep kind of carrying on like, oh, a bank closed on my high street. Never mind. At least I can use my cards and I've got my app. I've currently refused to use the NHS digital app. And I wanted to, a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to make an appointment with my doctor. And I rang the surgery and it literally felt like I was trying to enter Fort Knox. It was ridiculous. I wanted a referral for some blood tests and I wanted to see the doctor. And they were like, you need to go on the website. But if you click into the app, it will be made much easier. I said, I'm not doing the app. And as a consequence of me not having the NHS app, I had to jump over hurdles just to get a doctor's appointment. It was ridiculous. In order for me to get a referral for my bloods, as one example, I had to go online. Then they had to respond to me. Then they said that a doctor had to see me before it was referred. It was just ridiculous. But they kept saying to me, and they kept stressing this to me, it would be so much easier if you use the app. Yeah, of course it would. We have to resist as much as humanly possible. We keep being warned. How many more warnings do we need? Is really the question. How many more warnings do we need, people? Thank you, Simon Harris, for speaking up. I missed who said that. And Scott, they are. It's just awful what is going on. And Markson said, not sure a doc is the answer these days. I hear you. And there's very few things that I will use the doctors for, but blood test is one of them. It's a good one. It's awful, Trinity. We don't have to live like this. And Simon Harris in the comments saying we need to recognize a Palestinian state now. More power to your elbow, Simon. Absolutely wonderful to have you with us. Reba said, Sonia, I feel for the elderly who don't have or want smartphones. They are more isolated than ever. They are, sister. Isn't it worrying? Smash that like button, please, to Synchronized Soul, who is going through a moving process right now. And we love you very much and hope it's all wonderful for you. I'm sure it will be. You deserve everything and more. Right. What do I want to go on to? I want to go on to this young lady. She's been causing a bit of a stink, hasn't she? Commented on her last week. And obviously she is being sued in a huge, huge lawsuit by the president of France and the first lady. And one of the reasons is because Candice made an 8-part series in which she made all manner of claims about the president and the first lady, including the fact that the first lady was actually born male. And it's very interesting, in the week or so since she's had that lawsuit, she has literally like doubled, tripled and quadrupled down. She's not messing around. On the one hand, and I said this last week, I respect any journalist doubling down in a legal case when people, know that they are in the right. Okay. But the way that she's going on is going to be used against her. Doubling down is great if you're sure of what you're saying. It's poor practice to do it in litigation because she will be tested on her theories inside and out. And the worrying thing is her theories appear to be taking some kind of on-screen adjustment at this moment in time. I'm waiting to see how she responds to the lawsuit, not the stuff that she's saying online, which will get her in trouble with the judges. She will be seen as being unnecessarily provocative. But, maybe she doesn't care. Maybe she's so absolutely convinced about what she's saying that she feels this is her only route. And so what she's now saying is her new proposition is that potentially she's saying that Bridget was absolutely a person, and maybe it was the case that what happened was Bridget was dying and her brother, who was transgender, took her identity. Maybe it was Bridget's last dying wish that her brother should be able to take her identity. Now that sounds absolutely bonkers, right? But the one thing that Candice said about this that made me go, well, that is interesting. And that was, she said, the thing is that when this would have all have happened, it would have been even more unacceptable to be transgender and the problems and these things associated and attached to it. And I got that. I think there's some truth in that it would have been very difficult. Whether she's right or not is a whole other story. And I'm not convinced that she doesn't realize how much big trouble she's in. I think she knows that she's got a big, tall order on her hands. And she has to be careful because based on her new theory, so that the sister is gifting the brother her identity when she was apparently on her deathbed. But I have questions. And that is, were the remaining siblings, at least 3 of them, complicit in the cover-up. Is that what Candice is saying? And also, where is the death certificate for Bridget? Because if you're going to start saying that somebody died, but there's no death certificate, and that the cover-up has gone to the state, this is very, very serious. Now, I don't always agree with Candace Owens on rather a lot of things, and certainly not her promotion of sex attackers. The whole thing with Harvey Weinstein, frankly, makes me squirm. All these prison calls, and she's, you know, definitely downplaying what he is convicted of, and that really disturbs me. And I also don't find a lot of her analysis particularly persuasive. It's very easy analysis, and I don't think she's been sued before, has she? So I don't think she yet knows what it's like in a court. And in a court, and people can be very cynical about courts, but I have firsthand experience, having spent the last 5 years in and out of the High Court. And my experience of the High Court is, if you have the evidence, you're okay. You're okay. And judges are interested in evidence, not in theories or whether this person said that or that person. They are interested in evidence. So what sort of evidence is going to have to be revealed in the disclosures in order to be able for Candice to win? I think, I'm not even convinced that this will last the duration. There's a lot of problems with the lawsuit itself, even though it's extensive. And sometimes very extensive ones are often full of filler. And there is filler in there, no doubt about it. It's massive. It's like a 22 count claim for an undisclosed sum. Clearly, they're looking to get a lot of money from Candice Owens. And I'm a bit concerned. Candice Owens made an absolute fortune from that series. So she should be using the profits from that series, obviously, to support herself in legal situations. But I can see that she's already working herself up to a GoFundMe. Now, some of us need GoFundMes, right? For situations like this. I was certainly one of them. I didn't use GoFundMe. But some of us need legal funds in order to be able to support us. But she isn't one of them. And she's a multi-millionaire, and she's married to a multi-millionaire. And I find that problematic when she's already starting to hint, we don't need a GoFundMe now, but if we do, I'll let you know. They should never need funds. They shouldn't. She made a fortune. She made an absolute fortune from her series, and that should be used. But not only her series, she also produced merchandise. All of this stuff is going to be problematic for her in court. So we shall see. And I repeat what I repeated last week, and that is, whatever is true, we should not escape from the fact that Brigitte Macron met her husband, Emmanuel, in really problematic, troubling circumstances. She was a teacher. He was a 14-year-old student, and they said nothing untoward happened. They didn't get together until he was of legal age, and blah, 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 blah. And I think that the real problem here that we're looking at is that a young boy was groomed by his teacher. And that we must not lose sight of. Whatever else is true or false, I don't think we must lose sight of the fact that France's First Lady and the President of France are likely a couple with the man who was groomed by the older woman. I think that's a reality. And I think that we shouldn't lose sight of that. Some people say with Candice, the chickens are coming home to roost. I am aware that some of my audience also watch Candice. So some of what I say will not necessarily be appreciated by you. I get that. My opinion is that she's not a very nice person. She's highly judgmental about race and sexuality. I find her to be a bigot, and I don't find her always to be particularly honest. She once set up a doxing operation to identify what she considered online trolls. She linked them back to their workplaces. She was into cancel culture big time, even though she obviously now claims to be a big purveyor of free speech. She was a lefty, but she couldn't make it in that particular political arena. And so, like Elon Musk, she switched because she not only aligned with the views of those of MAGA, but they were also easier for her to ingratiate herself with. She was essentially a problem to the left because she was trying to get people cancelled within the left, right? I think anybody who is involved in doxing another person is reprehensible. I really do. So there you go. They will fake Bridget died soon to get out of the court case, says Gemma. And Gemma, thank you for the super chat. You are a star. Thank you so much. But I think I'm really waiting to see what Candice's response to this is. She's not an idiot. She's not unintelligent. I don't think that about her. I think that she is a very capable host. I think she's very capable of pulling many threads together. And so I have respect for her in that regard. I don't always have respect for her conclusions. And I also have respect for the fact that she says, no, what I'm saying is absolutely correct. So I will fight this to the bitter end. That I can respect too. So I want to see how this develops. We shall see. We shall see. We shall see. Okay, what are we moving on to? Look, I'm aware what I'm going to say next is going to be a very unpopular opinion because he's treated like the second coming last week. But the Osbournes, the Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, who died at the age of 76 on July 22nd, just weeks after his final performance at Birmingham's Villa Park during his Back to the Beginning show. Well, tens of thousands of Ozzy Osbourne fans lined the streets of his hometown in Birmingham on Wednesday last week for the funeral procession. And obviously, Ozzy, legendary rocker, former Black Sabbath frontman. And the hearse holding Osbourne's coffin made its way down Broad Street, past the Black Sabbath bridge, because in Birmingham, Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne is a very, very big thing. Son of Birmingham, as they call him. Then there was his widow, Sharon Osbourne, children, Jack and Kelly Osbourne and Amy, and they got out and they looked at all the flowers and everything. But I want to know, was it just me who was uncomfortable with all the kind of level of dark imagery and symbolism that accompanied Ozzy's funeral procession? And of course, it's a funeral, right? It's in vast parts of the world, including the UK, it's long been traditional to wear black or at least somber colours. But this was something else. This was something else. And so celebrated is Ozzy Osbourne that there were brass bands around the UK who were playing his music during the funeral procession. He was also famous, by the way, for using an assortment of rituals on stage, including blood rituals. There was that time where he claimed to have accidentally bit the head off a bat. He said something had been thrown at him. He thought it was plastic. He bit the head off a bat on stage. And after his music career ended, he became a reality star. The Osbournes are very much part of a new wave of reality TV. It was all still curated, even though we were told it was kind of in the raw. And some of the imagery last week, really problematic. Look at Sharon. I mean, this was kind of like a final salute to her husband. And those are exactly the same fingers that are thrust forward for a Baphomet. And Baphomet has long been a symbolism of Satanism. But there's obviously a lot of occult rituals that are associated with Baphomet. But I was left in no doubt whatsoever that this was some sort of celebration of Satanism. And I don't claim to know everything about this issue, but I was left very deeply uncomfortable with the imagery that was in front of us. And Ozzy obviously has long worked with imagery of Satanism, including kind of devil worship, blood rituals. But he was, the thing is that they mainstream all this stuff, right? So it's like, you know, first of all, he was treated like the second coming last week, and then he had a burial in the following days as well. And I get it. He will have made a lot of money for tourist industries, no doubt about that, particularly in Birmingham, because people go to Birmingham to see the kind of home place of Ozzy Osbourne. And I think they eventually rerouted to America, didn't they? They still kept a home in Berkshire, I think it was. So Ozzy has long obviously played with the whole imagery of Satanism, but I just felt at the funeral a lot of it was problematic to me, and I didn't like it. And Christine is talking about Sharon Osbourne and Ozempic. So here's the thing about the Osbourne family is so what Ozzy Osbourne did, even if you're a fan of Ozzy Osbourne, it was because of Ozzy Osbourne that the world has now had to deal with the insufferable idiots that are Sharon and Kelly Osbourne. And they are as insufferable and ridiculous as it gets. They're horrible, horrible people. They are fame junkies, and whereas Ozzy Osbourne had his own fan base, people loved his music, and actually they did do some good songs. But Kelly and Sharon Osbourne were part of the new wave of being famous for the sake of being famous. And they visited on the world these horrible, horrible beauty standards, which you can see with the Ozempic face. Sharon has had so much plastic surgery. And by all accounts, she inflicted that kind of almost hatred of what she looks like on her two daughters as well, Amy and Kelly. And like the Kardashians, absolutely none of them look like they were born. With Kelly, we had a true insight into her mind. Do you remember when she made that comment years ago on, I think it was on The View, and she was talking about Donald Trump, and she was saying, I'm paraphrasing her, but she was saying, you know, Donald Trump, if you want to deport all the immigrants, who are going to get to clean our toilets now? Do you remember that when Kelly said that? That was an insight into what they really think. So my problem with them mostly, aside from I didn't like the imagery, and I think it's absolutely unquestionable what she was doing in that imagery, unquestionable. But I absolutely loathe the influence that they've had on young girls. They have set this idea of obscene beauty standards. And I mean, all the Osbourne women, they've all savaged their faces. It's just horrible, really horrible stuff. So I just wanted to mention that. And as I say, unpopular opinion. But the thing about me is I don't care. I don't care. And by the way, guess how much money the Ozzy Osbourne estate has made in the week since he died. This is incredible. Ozzy Osbourne, according to Forbes Big Money magazine, but according to Forbes, Ozzy Osbourne owns 90% of a single Billboard chart. Right now, it's not unusual for musicians when they die for their back catalogue to, you know, people to just buy it in the ton. Right, that's not unusual, but on Billboard's hard rock digital song sales chart, Ozzy Osbourne has occupied 9 out of 10 of the available spots. That's quite phenomenal. And I mean, that's just quite phenomenal that it's taken up by Ozzy and Black Sabbath tracks as well. I don't think that even happened with Prince or Whitney or Michael Jackson. So I think that's interesting in itself. Interesting. Post-cult. How do I pronounce that? Haig says, can't stand them. Sharon O is an opportunist, doesn't give up about music. She just wants notoriety. She's an actress. They're horrible people. Horrible. I actually, despite the fact that I wasn't a Black Sabbath fan or any of those things, I found Ozzy, because Ozzy was obviously always very much presented. Ozzy died ultimately of Parkinson's. He had a kind of quite a unique version of Parkinson's, apparently, which happened following a fall, but it was an inheritance as well. Ozzy, like when they did the Osbourne show, and it just showed how disgusting the household was. Dogs were crapping all over the place and everything. But Ozzy was the most endearing of all of them. Sharon and Kelly in particular are just horrible people. They're just horrible, soulless people, in my opinion. But they're going to make a ton more money. Yes, indeed they are. And right. This is interesting. I want to move to your shout now, which is where you, our wonderful viewers, send in emails and messages to me. And I want to look at some of them. And I want to start with Paul Cardin, who wrote in, having made an interesting discovery. And let me just show you this. If I can find it. Let me see if I can find it up here. Is it up here? No. So the interesting discovery that Paul had made. Paul, I want to find a picture to accompany. Here it is. This is a man I know fairly well, not on a personal level, but his name is Clarence Mitchell, and he was for many years the spokesperson for the McCanns. And Paul discovered that Clarence is now a Reading Borough Tory councillor. Now, what's interesting about that is Clarence Mitchell is featured in my documentary about the media and the McCanns. And I doorstepped him on the night when he was hoping to get into Parliament. And that was when he was in Brighton. So clearly, the Tories are very, very keen for Clarence Mitchell, who was one of the first BBC journalists on the scene following the murder of Jill Dando. Clearly, the Tories are very, very keen to get Clarence Mitchell in Parliament by hook or by crook. And I thought that was very interesting. Thank you, Paul, for sending in that information. And Clarence Mitchell doesn't so much act as a spokesperson for the McCanns these days. But I'm sure if there's any big news story that comes up and they need somebody to talk, he'll do it for them. And I just think that Clarence Mitchell is an interesting character. He was not only started off, well, he was in journalism, but he was also part of Labour's media monitoring unit when Tony Blair was in power. And Clarence, by his own admission, his job was not only to get certain things in the press, but to keep certain things out. He was very well connected. I upset a lot of people when I doorstepped this man, a lot of people. I lost work. And so extremely well connected, not so much so now these days. And I just find it interesting that they're so keen to get him into power that they've moved him from attempting Brighton, which was never going to happen because Brighton is like a Green Party stronghold, to Reading. Interesting. So the fact that he's now a Reading Borough Councillor, that suggests to me that it's only a matter of time, of course, that they're going to find an area for him to go up into a general election. I wouldn't be at all surprised. And by the way, I was just approached recently by a journalist who has been commissioned to write a new book on the McCanns. My sense, and would I be involved? No. The answer is no. My sense is it's not going to be anything new. It's a rehash of the story. I just don't want to be involved with any of this kind of stuff. I really don't. I'm so sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of the exploitation of Madeleine McCann. And honestly, we don't need another book exploring what's gone on, because these books never explore what actually went on. But if this one does, I may be pleasantly surprised. We shall see. And of course, this month, Julia Wandholt, who claimed to be Madeleine McCann, is back in court. And I think that she is hoping to be released on bail prior to her trial in October. Interesting stuff. And Marcuson, what was that you were tweeting me this morning on X about Imperial College? Imperial College, of course, at the start of COVID, they were the ones who were very much involved in determining and creating the models about what was taking place. Well, now the Imperial College is asking for volunteers needed for a COVID-19 controlled human infection study. If you are 18 to 40 years old and in excellent health, you may be eligible. You will be reimbursed almost $5,000, $4,935 for your time and travel. So they are looking for people who have been jabbed. They're saying that they're carrying out a challenge study to better understand COVID-19. The study involves 5 visits over a period of around 6 months, including a 2-week quarantine stay where healthy volunteers will be given the virus that causes COVID-19. What do we make of that? And did anybody see a central casting advert that appeared last week where they were asking for volunteers to be part of a new vaccine drive? I don't have that information in front of me, and I wish I did. MB says, get injected by Neil Ferguson. No, thanks. Do you remember what an absolute hypocrite he was, that he did all that modelling, right? Neil Ferguson, a central name at the start of C19 in the UK. He did all that modelling, right? And involved in all let's keep a distance and everything. And it turned out he was sneaking out to spend time with his mistress. And the reason all these people did it, loads of them broke the law and broke rules, including politicians. And the reason they did it is because they knew there was nothing to fear. Professor Pantsdown, Sugar's just reminded me. You're talking about Bill Gates. Anybody seen? Oh, that's interesting. Jan said, so they've isolated the virus, ? Good question, Jan. Christine was wanting to know, what about a gonorrhea-free jab? Hilarious. Markson said it's just 5,000 for another shot. Get rid of some stock. Somebody just mentioned Bill Gates. Anybody see what's happening in Holland? I got some notes about that. Anybody seen that? Let me see if I can find my notes. So I think at the start of the year, I had talked about Arno van Kessel. Do you remember that? And you might not, but he's a lead lawyer in the case against Gates and Albert Bourla and other people for allegations of vaccine harm, crimes against humanity. And Arno, who was leading it, was actually arrested in June, thrown into a maximum security prison for purportedly espousing anti-institutional ideology. His detention was extended for another 3 months. Apparently, he spoke to his wife for the first time only a few days ago. Now, this is very, very troubling. And thank you to the viewer who tagged me in and pointed that out to me. But they will come after you if you speak out. And, Bill Gates is in everybody's pocket, for goodness sake. Everybody's pocket. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting. And it's Dilip, everything is beyond Orwellian what we are living, which is kind of like why I rock up here, because it's a mad time that we're living through, right? Right, let me go back to your shout, you beautiful people. This kind of fairly hilarious, I think. The PSI games, they were over the weekend, and lovely Mark Porritt, who regularly sends ideas in to Wake Up, had sent me this before the PSI games had even started. And but I didn't actually see the email, so I apologize, Mark, but it looks absolutely fascinating. Have I got something which actually shows something about it? It looks fascinating. And the PSI games, by the way, is the Olympics for psychics. Mark points out that his favorite discipline is telekinesis. I want to go. I actually want to go next year. This year it's in the Charlottesville Hotel from August the 1st to the 3rd. So it finished yesterday. It's about unleashing the extraordinary. It's about exploring, learning, and competing in PSI skills. I want to do it. I want to go, Mark. It just sounded fascinating to me. Yeah, it sounded like a lot of fun. But it might not just be a lot of fun. It might be more besides. And probably quite creepy to be around a lot of people who, because I do believe that we have these extraordinary talents and abilities. We've been dumbed down. We've been separated from them. I think it's highly possible that we can levitate and do all manner of things that have been denied us because, well, we've been denied real education and real knowledge. And I think a conference and a gathering like this sounds like a lot of fun, frankly. Unleashing the extraordinary at the PSI games. Sounds great. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for telling me about that. And hello to James in Bristol, who refers to something that happened the other week. And I meant to cover this last Monday and again ran out of time. But I think it's interesting what James is saying. He said, hi, Sonia, just a quick one. What do you think now we have another woman found dead in water? Something strange going on, perhaps? This is James in Bristol. And he's referring to Rachel Booth, a mother who was found in a lake in Oakmere in Cheshire a couple of weeks back. I'll show you Rachel's image in case you may not be familiar. And so I decided to look into what it is James is actually saying. And what's interesting, I think, that I discovered from my research is that, and first of all, the reason that James says that, of course, there's been a lot of high-profile women found in water. So obviously one of the most recent high-profile ones was Nicola Bulley, who was found in Lancashire. Then February this year, there was Saffron Cole Nottage, who was found on a Suffolk beach path. And then in June of this year, two sisters, Hara Zahid and Halima Zahid, they were both pulled from the water at an area of Gwynedd in Gwent in Wales. And I think, so that's sort of the background of why James is saying that. But what's interesting, I decided to look into that because we've covered this before, and it is interesting that it is always made a big thing and it hits the headlines. And what's interesting is even though we hear more about women drowning in the UK, it's actually men who are more likely to drown than women, and many times over, many times over. So according to the Water Instant Research Hub, between 2011 and 2022, 2,970 males were found in drowning fatalities compared to 604 females. So that's substantial, isn't it? And at every age, by the way, more males drown than females. And then when it moved to 2023, I looked at, because those are like some of the most recent key statistics. In 2023, there were 236 accidental drownings in the UK. And there is a continued male overrepresentation. In fact, males continue to be so significantly overrepresented in so-called accidental drowning fatalities that they account for 83% of deaths. 83% of deaths. How many men are hitting the headlines who have drowned? And this should tell us something about the nature of our media, right? Is that they're not actually focusing necessarily on the biggest phenomenon, which is the sheer volume of men who are drowning. This is huge, absolutely huge, a significant number. But they are focusing on these solitary cases of the women. And why? That suggests to me that there is some sort of agenda behind that. Obviously, women are generally considered to be more vulnerable than men. That's what we're commonly told. But I really think we need to get back on track about this and about other things as well, for one example. And I've covered the stories of like Nicola Bulley, because I too were like, why are so many women drowning? But when I started to drill deeper into it, I was like, actually, why are so many men drowning? Which is also a big question that we should be asking. Some of them, obviously, there's lots of question marks over all of them. I don't necessarily think that all of them are drowning accidents. I think that it's highly likely some people have been killed. But there is also the issue of cold water shock, which is a very real thing. And especially in open water, when temperatures remain low, even in warmer months. And the initial contact with the water can just kill people. And it has been known to happen. I've interviewed people I interviewed one woman as one example, whose son died from cold water shock, and he just entered the water and that was it. He was gone, very, very sadly. Is that right, Blue Nomad? Is that right? That's interesting. Wait, these are very interesting things that you're saying. I don't know if some of these things are true, but they're fascinating, like about the fact that women float more than men. Is that a thing? Is that actually a thing? Because I need to look into that. Yes, Maria, water kills in more ways than one. So yes, James, I still think it's interesting because I think it's opened up a wider thing for me. And that is, why are so many people drowning? What's going on? What's going on? Did he, Monopods, Thomas Sheridan, who I have a lot of time for, drew attention to men who died in the canals in Manchester a few years ago. And Charlie talks about that. What about the Manchester canal deaths? Indeed. This is very interesting. This is some interesting comments here that I don't know if they're true or not, but it's really interesting, some of this. Blue Nomad said, when I lived in Bath, it was very common for men to go missing and then their body was found in the canal. Troubling. Greg said, yes, I believe there are advantages for females in water due to their higher fat ratio. So I wonder if women are being discovered sooner. Very interesting. Look at that, James. Look, you've opened up a whole new avenue for us to explore. Thank you, Be Happy, for sending me the personal carbon allowance of Coca-Cola. I want to look into that more for a future show. Thank you very much. Very much appreciate that. And this is lovely. This is an interesting email from Alan Cornford. And Alan said, hi, Sonia. Firstly, I hope this email finds you well, as myself and my wife have been watching your news reports since we first came across you on brand new Tube 5 years ago. Thank you for traveling with me, Alan and wife. Thank you. I appreciate that. He said, like yourself, I am not a religious person. I am, however, a Bible-believing Christian, but without all the trimmings. True religion being, and I quote, to care for the orphaned and the widowed, i.e. those less fortunate in life. In brief, my reason for contacting you is to offer a different perspective for all of the insanity, lies, and deception we are faced with on a daily basis. That perspective being, we have been deceived about pretty much everything in life, including the prophetic timeline. I first became a Christian 25 years ago, and like multi-millions of Christians worldwide, was taught that all the signs indicated that Christ would return very soon. But although taught in good faith, this too was all part of a massive deception, and the evidence suggests it was all instigated by Zionists and funded by the Rothschild dynasty. Christians have also been deceived into believing that the creation of the modern day state of Israel was a fulfillment of Bible prophecy, which it was not, even though I too believed it for many years, like Simon Harris, in fact, right? To cut a very long story short, when reading the words of Jesus himself, but with a fresh pair of eyes, virtually all end time prophecy was fulfilled in the early 1st century. For Babylon, aka Jerusalem, fell at the return of Christ in judgment in 70 AD, just as Jesus had predicted around 40 years earlier. And I think what's interesting about this is when people start to look at everything with like fresh eyes, and also Alan, who is, even though he says he's like not particularly religious like me, Clearly, he has a better understanding of religion and the Bible than I do. But I really like the fact that, again, people are prepared to look at things with fresh eyes. And I think that we are experiencing a great awakening right now. And so I think Alan's email is quite long, so I can't read it all. But the essential message is we've got to be careful, because there's a lot of great deceivers around us who are using the Bible and the so-called return of Jesus to probably implement and enact some really heinous things all around us. And I think that's an excellent point that he makes. And he said, I don't expect you to believe all this, but I present it as food for thought, which you might want to check out for yourself. Well, I certainly will. And seeing as one Wake Up viewer sent me a beautiful Bible, when I've got some time off, I will be looking into that. In the meanwhile, thank you for your honest reporting. It is much appreciated. And thank you for that as well. I really appreciate it. And because I think religion is one of those things, don't they say, don't have impolite conversation, don't discuss politics, don't discuss religion. Well, actually, we discuss all of that on Wake Up, and people get angry and people get upset, and all of those things are fine, because better out than in. Okay. But I do take Alan's point that a lot of the stuff that we have been seeing may indeed be part of a mass deception, and we should be really careful about that. And Alan, if you're interested, Alan refers to Revelation 27 as the little season, an open-ended period of time where Satan has been given the authority to deceive every nation and individual on earth. Interesting stuff. Alan, thank you for that. I very much appreciate it. Much love to you and your glorious wife. Thank you. And I will be away at the end of this week. I will be away for a week. And when I return on August the 18th, Paul Burgess from Climate Realism channel will be joining me. Now, you remember we put out a call, didn't we, for he absolutely does not believe in chemtrails. He thinks it's ridiculous. He thinks that anybody who ports it are conspiracy theorists and all of these things. And he's not impressed with us at all. But in the spirit of free speech around here, one viewer wrote in and said, would you consider having Paul on? Absolutely. I don't just have people on who agree with me, because that's not going to get us anywhere, right? But what I didn't want to do was it necessarily to be me who was part of the debate with Paul, because I felt that there was a danger that I may fall out with him and I didn't want to, but actually nobody else has been prepared to do it. And so I've decided to invite Paul on, but to involve you beautiful people. So here's what I want you to do, is that either please join us on that day, because I've asked Paul to come on and be prepared to take an open Q&A about his belief that chemtrails are rubbish and anybody who believes in them are conspiracy theorists. So I want you either on the day to be asking him questions as part of a Q&A, or send them in prior to that and I will have them ready. You can send them to Sonia Poulton at sky.com. So there you go. Randy said, Paul who? Paul Burgess. He's been on before. He's great on, like, talking about the climate hoax and everything. But he and I do absolutely disagree to do with chemtrails. And many of our viewers will disagree with him. But that doesn't mean he shouldn't be heard. Doesn't mean that. And especially, he's literally prepared to put himself here and you Q&A him. I think that takes some guts. I think it takes some guts. Right. Okay, I want to also, before we end today's show, I want to briefly talk about this guy. Fascinating. He's been around for a while now, and I'm probably going to make an absolute pig's ear of pronouncing his name. He's from Zimbabwe. He's an inventor. His name is Maxwell Chikumbutso. That's it, Maxwell Chikumbutso. And he's an inventor. And he has been, for at least the last 3 years, demonstrating free energy technology, which he started off in his car. And he said it can transfer to the house as well. And he's managed to get local politicians involved as well. Here he is. Brilliant stuff, fascinating stuff online. But he's now being pursued. So what he said is that, just to break it down as basically as I can, is he says that he can run a car indefinitely without charging it through his microsonic energy device, which he says converts radio frequencies into usable energy. Now, his inventions have, as you can imagine, have been met with all manner. I mean, people are demonizing him, but worse than that, he also says there's been an attack on his life. And so, because what he's propositioning and what he's offering is a self-powering electric vehicle that will not need, was hardly going to cost us anything once we've got the original equipment. But clearly, if what he's saying is true, and there's a lot of people who are trying to debunk him right now, but clearly, if what he's saying is true, his invention will pose a threat to energy industries all around the world. And he said that there's been a threat to his life. He said when he was in the US, he said that he and his partner were poisoned when they were in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is the home of all the tech giants, of course. And he claims that as a consequence of them being poisoned, he was then forced to return to Zimbabwe at the invitation of the president. President Mnangagwa, is very interested in this invention, as you can imagine. Now, if what he's saying is accurate and correct, and many of us have long known it's surely possible for free energy. And of course, you can see why business operations all around the world, particularly globalists, do not want us to be aware of that. And of course, his life is in danger. I cannot access, like on my main computer, I cannot access any of my system. And I'm literally in the middle of a conversation about free energy. The whole thing has gone down in a year and a half of doing Wake Up. This has never happened. I don't understand it. I'm extremely confused. Is anybody still there? It's weird. It's so weird. So I just wanted to come back in briefly. I'm on my mobile right now. I don't know if this is like finishing off the show or not, but just want to come back in and say that was really peculiar. I have no idea what happened. And I mean, I just cannot even begin to talk to you on the main system. It won't show it. It said this site can't be reached. So I don't know what's happened, what has taken place, but how curious. It's in the middle of us talking about free energy. How curious is that? Well, look, I just want to say thank you so much for being here today. I'm not going to end with the final note, which was actually about conserving your energy, by the way, because I don't know how much of this is coming on the live chat or coming on the live stream right now because the comments are not showing. But thank you very much for being here. That is weird. I'm going to look into it. I have no idea what's happened. Very peculiar stuff. So who knows? Who can ever tell? Thank you so much for being here. I will see you on Friday. Take good care of yourself. Have a great week.